Hello, we'll be finalizing this Kotlin full stack course with a final look around the application. So we'll go through a little bit of a backend and frontend, and then we'll create a deployable jar file and deploy that into a server. Well, in this section, we'll be going through modifying the backend to serve data on first load, so to increase the performance of the application or the perceived performance for the user. We'll rehydrate backend served data on the front end, finalize our build processes to build backend with frontend included, and then we'll create a deployable jar file and deploy that on a Linux machine on AWS. In this video, we'll be going through dehydration and rehydration of data and serving data from the backend on initial load. We'll modify the payload to contain needed values that we can use on the front end. We'll create a content placeholder div on the back end and serve a data on that div. Then on the front end, we'll rehydrate that data and enhance that retrieved data on an XHR call after we have populated the model already. Previously, our index page HTML just contains one individual div. There might be some issues, especially if we are serving a large amount of data, because all of our actual data is coming through an XHR call. Not that we are already having projects, a list coming into our index function, so we don't really need to omit that on the initial page load. This project view is a smaller version of our full project entity that we are using on the front end. And we can actually use this project view as a placeholder to serve initial data for the user. Note that I have added a language in here as well, so that way we have all the fields on our list view available for us. How do we then serve this as a HTML or JSON blob that we can use on the front end? We can create a dehydration pattern in here. So if we create a new div within our application, and within this div we create a JavaScript variable that we bind into the window object, we can take that JavaScript variable and use that on the front end to rehydrate the data for us. So if we create a div and we use a Jackson object mapper to write our projects list out as a string. With this string, we'll create a global projects variable. I like to use the double underscore pattern in here just to make it sure that everyone knows this is a global variable, and it also gives us the ability to maybe prevent some collisions with other named global variables. And we just assign that JSON value as a string to our front end. On the front end side, then we can take that out and sanitize it and then rehydrate it. I have added a new dependency into the application. This is Lodash, which is a utility library for the front end. And with Lodash, we can unescape all the data that comes from the backend and make it recognizable for our front-end actual JavaScript code. Note that the initial data currently is gotten by using the fetch data function. This fetch data makes an XHR call and waits for the backend to respond. While it waits, it uses a spinner to indicate to the user that something is happening. But if the data that we are getting for the backend is fairly large and it takes a lot of time, it doesn't give the user the best experience with our application. So let's create a new function in here where we are using the initial data that we are serving from the backend. Note that the initial data does not contain all the fields that we want. It doesn't have the extra information, for example, but we have the ability to enhance that data then with our XHR call. So let's create a function called grab data. With this grab data, we'll use the Lodash unescape function, and we'll take the project's global variable and assign it into a value in Kotlin side. After we are done with that, we'll delete the content holder div completely. So we'll remove that from the DOM so the user doesn't see that. We might also want to delete the global variable after we have added that into our Redux store, but I haven't done that now. Let's comment out this div removal so you can see how the actual JSON looks when it comes from the backend. After we have gotten the JSON, we'll just use the Lodash unescape function and use JSON parse function from the browser to parse this JSON into an object. We use the same extract project function to make it a typed Kotlin value. We do need to modify the extract project a little bit. So previously we were taking in the extra info, or we were assuming that the extra info is available for us. We'll need to make an if clause check on that. If the extra info is available, then we use that, otherwise we won't take it in. Now that we have the grab data available, we can take the data from our window and you do a standard Redux action and then populate our store. So we'll create a new action. We use the same action type populate projects that we used within our fetch data function. But in this case, we'll use the grab data to take the actual information from the window page. With that all done, we can spin up the application. So let's see how that looks. We'll rebuild the front-end side, and let's also hit Ctrl F5 and let Spring Boot DevTools recompile our backend. And with our compiled project, we can finally start our backend application as well and see what kind of an HTML we are serving to ourselves. So let's take a look how that looks in the browser. Webpack has been restarted, so we can hit restart on the application and log in to our form. As you can see, the populate projects action has been dispatched twice. First when we got the data from the window, and the second time when we enhanced the data with our XHR call. If we take a look at the content holder div element in here, you can see that the JSON is a JavaScript variable that we are assigning to the window object, and it comes out with escaped quotation marks that the Kotlin or a string output type gives for us. With that, we can escape it with Lodash and then remove the actual div from our document completely.